If you'd like to, please subscribe. It helps me out a lot. I post every Wednesday. Hi everyone, my name is Catherine and welcome to today's video. I wanted to do something that I think is a little bit niche, but it's combining my two interests and passions and something that I've been wondering about, and I'm sure others have as well, and that is travel and sustainability / the environment, protecting the environment, conservation, all of that, and traveling responsibly. It is no secret that travel, whether it's flying or going by car, really just so many different parts to travel, can be bad for the environment, can produce, more carbon emissions. I wanted to see the ways that I've been traveling. How sustainable is it? Is it responsible travel? And what are these companies doing in today's age where consumers and travelers are showing much more interest in responsible travel and wanting to be sustainable and doing good. And so I've written down a bunch of notes in my notebook and on my phone. So if I'm looking down, I wanted to be prepared for this video because I wanted to look into the specifics of EF Ultimate Break and Contiki, which are very similar tour companies that are group travel tours for people that are between the ages of 18 to 35. I always say they're my favorite ways to travel. Let's get into it. So first off, I am really into reading, and a lot of the nonfiction books that I read have to do with sustainability and climate change and just knowing more about it. And luckily, a lot of them, although they show the facts, which oftentimes don't look good, have a very optimistic side to them. And I recently read How to Avoid a Climate Disaster by Bill Gates. And in the beginning of the book, I don't have the exact quote, he said something along the lines of, people aren't going to stop living because just by living, by consuming the foods we consume, by using transportation to get from point A to point B, everything in life, like we're not going to stop living. We're going to have to, instead of just not think about in order to be sustainable by doing less or stopping doing certain things, we have to change the method that we do things. And that's basically what he talked about in the book. He gave the facts for climate change and where we're at, but then he also talked about how we just need to change what we're doing and not necessarily stop. Like, for example, we're not going to stop traveling, so instead we have to alter the way we travel. And oftentimes that means, again, with like the types of fuels used on planes. I'll get into carbon later, getting to net zero when it comes to carbon emissions and things like that. And obviously that's going to take some time to figure out, and then probably even more time to get different organizations and society to follow suit. But there are a lot of things happening nowadays that are getting towards that goal. Oftentimes we're learning that it's not quite fast enough, but there's more leeway now than ever, which is good. For EF Ultimate Break, I have their website here pulled up on my phone, and I'll probably have it here on the screen. And they have their responsible travel initiatives that focus on 3 main commitments. They want to protect the environment, respect wildlife, and support the communities that you will visit on your trip. And each of these trips will hold promise to these 3 commitments. And I've seen these already on my tours, which is really great. So with the first one, with protecting the environment, they want to protect local conservation efforts. They want to provide public transport passes, for example, so that people will use that over like Ubers or whatever. I remember when I was on my Japan trip, I was surprised when my tour guide said, like, you have this budget that's already included in your when you bought the trip, so just like you have this for free. Technically, we didn't have to pay in addition this budget for the local public transportation, so that was really cool. And then also EF likes to work with local suppliers to design eco-friendly activities, such as going to the Chicake Natural Park in Colombia, going to the Manuel Antonio National Park in Costa Rica, going to the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, and things like that. And when you go to these places, you get to, of course, view the beautiful local biodiversity and really be immersed in these parks or the reef or whatever it may be. but you're also with a local environmentalist and you're learning about the different plant life there, the different animal life. You may be learning about what they're doing to support and protect this place. Maybe you're visiting again like a protected wildlife sanctuary or park or whatever it may be, and you're learning about what you could do to make more of a difference in that local park. And by visiting these places, you're also giving your money as a tourist, whether it's through EF when you bought the tour or if you buy something in addition while in country, to continue to help support these conservation efforts. Next, we have respecting wildlife, which is a bit more specific than just general protecting the environment. EF actually works with a nonprofit called World Animal Protection, and I've heard about them before. I've actually applied to work with them a couple of times in the past because they're a really cool company, and they basically work with EF Ultimate Break to create their welfare guidelines for how people on EF tours deal with wildlife that you encounter on tours. They have 5 freedoms of animal welfare, which I'll read here: the freedom from hunger and thirst, freedom from discomfort, freedom from pain, injury, or disease, freedom from fear and distress, and freedom to express normal behavior. So basically, when you're out in the wild seeing wildlife, you're not going to touch the animals, you're not going to disrupt the animals, you're not going to feed them foods, you're just going to keep your distance, you're not going to disrupt their everyday lives or do anything like that. And EF has been pretty good about that for sure. I did a trip with them to Kenya in August, and we did so many different safari park rides and everything. We were very respectful. We stayed in our vans the whole time. We didn't obviously pet any of the animals. These were wild animals. We didn't feed them. We didn't do anything. We had our distance. Everything was just done with respect and just not wanting to get in the way at all of these animals. And it's really cool to hear that EF has guidelines and they're actually working with an organization that specializes in animal welfare, especially wild animal welfare, which is pretty cool. And there's a lot of different things you get to do on different EF tours, such as a elephant nature park in Thailand. If you do the Thailand getaway trip, you get to watch rescued elephants play and forage and free roam in this nature park and learn about anti-poaching efforts. If you go on the Ecuador and Galapagos tour, which I did as well in 2022, you can see the wild tortoises there that live multiple hundreds of years. It's incredible, and learn more about them. And it was just, when I did that, it was so incredible. And at the bottom of these pages, EF also has tips about how to put the animals first when you're in their land as a tourist. Like I mentioned, keep your distance. Do not ever pay for a selfie with an animal. When I was in Peru, a lot of people had lambs or baby sheep or something like that, and they would want you to take photos of them. But in reality, these people took these lambs or alpacas away from their moms too early, and that's not ethical. So EF would let us know and be like, do not give them your money. This is supporting what they're doing. The next thing, so I feel the first one, which was protecting the environment, deals with the actual environment, and then respecting wildlife deals with the wildlife, the animals, and then supporting communities deals with the locals. And a lot of times when you think about sustainability, you think about just the environment or maybe animals of conservation. But according to the United Nations sustainability goals, if you've seen them, some of those goals that the United Nations put that is a part of sustainability, it includes also supporting communities, supporting people, because sustainability is also just sustaining a healthy world that will be sustainable. I feel I'm being repetitive with the word sustainable, but yeah, so it's cool that they included the locals as well. And EF tries to, again, incorporate different activities on their tours that help support the communities and not just go to bigger tour companies or whatever within that country, but really support the locals. And they have some examples like a Thai family dinner, which is pretty cool to eat an authentic home-cooked meal while in Thailand. You can go to a coffee plantation and see local farmers and how they're able to create coffee and again, by going there, you're supporting that community with your money. We're going to a Maasai tribe village visit, which is in Kenya. And again, I did that back in August and it was really cool. I was able to then afterwards, they have all of the locals, all of the women specifically create goods, a lot of them out of beads, and they were so intricate and beautiful. And I went a little crazy with getting the goods from there. It was just really cool to support them and buy those goods. And I remember it was the weirdest experience because this woman was following me and then holding what I like grabbed, and then she took me to this guy who was able to like speak English with me more so, and he wrote down the price of what I was to pay on his arm. Like he took his arm out and like wrote with like a little stick and was like writing on his arm. It wasn't a pencil, it's just like a stick. And then he was like, okay, now you put your price on my arm. And I'm like bargaining with this man on his arm in Kenya. It was such a weird experience, but I gave them what they asked for, and it was just really cool to be able to support those communities. All right, and then next I wanted to go to Contiki, and they talk more so about carbon than EF, and I just wanted to kind of go over carbon. Even though I read a lot of these books and I've worked within sustainability, it can still sometimes be a bit confusing. So again, I have notes. First, wanted to explain what carbon is. Carbon is a chemical element that occurs in all organic compounds and can be found in all known forms of life, such as diamonds, graphite, coal, petroleum, natural gas, etc. And why is carbon bad if it's found in everything in organic matter? Like, why is that bad? Carbon is bad to the environment because when carbon dioxide is released from carbon, it warms the planet, causing climate change. It forms a greenhouse effect going up to the atmosphere, and like a greenhouse, gets trapped in the air. Human activities such as energy production, burning coal, oil, or natural gas releases carbon dioxide, but this can also be released from animals, such as when they exhale carbon dioxide in a waste product format, or by deforestation. Carbon is in all organic matter, but then by, again, doing things like burning it for fuel, for energy, or like cutting down trees for deforestation, and it opens up the carbon in the organic matter. It turns into a gas, it goes up, and then it works where, like a greenhouse, where it goes up into the air, into the atmosphere, and then it's just trapped sitting there and it can't leave. So it can go up, but it can't like go down or out or whatever, dissipate. So that's kind of a brief overview of carbon and carbon dioxide. So now just wanted to let you know, because again, this is a video about sustainability and Contiki does really go into carbon, which I think is pretty cool. So Contiki's motto is make travel matter. Back in 2020, I remember also talking to people from Contiki and EF Ultimate Break, and 2020 definitely was a hard year for the travel industry because no one was traveling. It was an opportunity for these travel companies to put their focus into other parts of the business and how they can better themselves with this extra, more or less free time. And that's what they did. They found room for growth in ways that they could given the circumstances. For example, 2020, Contiki really focused on their sustainability matters. And I just think that's so cool to do something so good. So in 2020, they released goals that were based on the United Nations SDGs, or Sustainability Development Goals, which I've mentioned earlier on. And that includes animal welfare, climate action, local communities, and more. So kind of similar to what, or really similar to what EF has going on. And in January 2022, Contiki went carbon neutral, which is very impressive, and like the main thing that we as a society, as a planet, need to do in order to not have the global temperatures rise up is to go carbon zero. So going carbon neutral is really massive. Being carbon neutral means that there's a balance between emitting carbon and absorbing carbon from the atmosphere in carbon sinks. So you can emit carbon, but then there are certain things that you could do to take away carbon from the sky. Contiki at this point in 2022 isn't carbon zero. The amount of carbon that they release in the air, they balance out by doing other activities that take away carbon. And things that you can do is by planting more trees, for example. Trees naturally absorb the carbon, but they do aim to be net zero by 2050 or before. And again, 2050 sounds far away, but being net zero is a pretty big feat. They're going to be cutting greenhouse gas emissions to zero or as close as possible, and then remove or balance the rest out. And they aim to reduce emissions from their offices and their special stays by 46% by 2030. And they're going to reduce emissions from trips overall by 27.5% by 2030. Ultimate goal is to go carbon zero by 2050, but they have these big goals before then and they've already become carbon neutral. So that makes me just feel so good and confident about traveling with both EF Ultimate Break and Contiki. Contiki has a climate plan, which I've written out for you all. So they want to be accountable. They don't just want to say a bunch of things and then we're like, okay, cool, and we like move on with our lives. They plan to first off measure and report their carbon footprint on a yearly basis. They want to reduce by using science-based target solutions. They're also doing this by creating a carbon fund. They want to restore, and by doing this, they want to invest through their Tread Right Foundation. So I didn't even know that Contiki had their own foundation, which is pretty cool. And they want to invest in nature-based solutions to help remove excess carbon from the atmosphere and to support biodiversity. And also I wanted to note that they also work with the World Animal Protection, like EF, to make their version of animal welfare guidelines for tours when tourists that go on these Contiki trips see animals in the wildlife. And they also want to evolve. So in addition to doing everything, they want to continue to learn, they want to continue to invest, and they want to just really move the travel industry to a low carbon economy. That is pretty much most of the notes that I've got going on for these two companies, and a little lesson on carbon as well. I hope you found these videos interesting. I want to continue to learn more about responsible travel and go on tour companies that take it very seriously. I will say I feel like Contiki's is a bit more robust. If I had to choose one or the other when it comes to sustainability, from what I found online, Contiki seems to be doing more, but EF is still doing quite a lot, and I still feel good about what they're doing. They just didn't really list things about carbon, which is like the big thing when it comes to sustainability and avoiding or dealing with climate change and trying to fight that. But both companies are still doing a lot, and it's pretty incredible. So I hope you found this video to be interesting. Let me know if you're interested about this topic. I'm kind of combining two niches. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video of mine. Bye!